Alright guys, today I'm going to be giving you my top 13 coasters at Hershey Park. So I'm going to be ranking every single coaster here. Now, Wildcats Revenge is going to open this summer, but I feel like it's a pretty safe bet that's going to come in number 2. And, unless it's like definitely the worst RMC, or unless it's like the greatest thing of all time, I don't see it not being number 2. But I will ride that on King Size Pass Holder Preview Day, so we'll see. But for now, these are the top 13 coasters at Hershey Park ranked. Coming in at the number 13 spot is Coco Cruiser. This is an average kiddie coaster. You'll find the exact same ride at parks like Six Flags Great Adventure and Dorney Park, less than 2 hours away from it. And it's fine. It's nothing special. It's a credit. You can get this credit without a kid, though. Coming in at number 12 is Wild Mouse. I don't think this is quite the worst Wild Mouse of all time, but it's pretty bad. You have a T-bar restraint, basically, and the middle of it divides the two seats in the row, and the middle of that T-bar hurts. When you slam to the side of it, which there's going to be a lot of that, it really digs into your legs, and it's not fun. And other than that, it's just a normal, boring Wild Mouse layout. It doesn't even have a drop like the larger models, like Fly at Canada's Wonderland or the Legoland ones. It's just, I don't know, it doesn't do anything for me. The hairpin turns are supposed to be exciting, but I know that half of them are going to be really painful, and the others are like, I don't think they're the craziest laterals ever because you're not necessarily going at super fast speeds through these things. And I didn't get any airtime on the little drops at the end of the ride. So overall, it's a pretty bad coaster, but still not a kiddie coaster. At the number 11 spot is Trailblazer. This is possibly the least exciting mine train I've done, only behind Carolina Gold Rusher, but it's one of the smoothest, so it's not terrible. I mean, it just basically meanders around Pioneer Frontier. It has a nice helix at the end. That's about it. There's no airtime on it, no crazy laterals or forces. It's just a nice, relaxing ride that the whole family can enjoy, which is definitely something every park needs. Number 10 is Laugh Track. This is a clone of a ride at my home park, Whirlwind at Seabreeze. So I never even rode this in my last visit, but I mean, it's a clone of a coaster at my home park, so I think I have a good feel for it. It's a spinning mower in a box. That's basically all you need to know. It's very average. The layout, from what I remember, was very trimmed, so didn't really get much spinning at all. And the lights are cool, so that's something, I guess, but it's never worth anywhere near the wait that it always has. You're going to be waiting over 2 hours for this thing on an average Saturday, which is something I was not willing to do for a clone of a ride at my home park. So, I don't know, Laugh Track, it's all right. It's definitely not a must-do, especially with the lines it gets, but it's fun. Number 9 is Super Duper Looper. This is the first looping coaster on the East Coast, and it kind of feels like it. That first drop is good. That first vertical loop is actually very good. I'll actually sometimes gray out on that. Those Schwarzkopf loops, for some reason, are really intense for me. But the rest of the layout is kind of dumb, in my opinion. It's basically Trailblazer from then on. There's one drop that looks like it should give good airtime, but it doesn't because of a trim break. And the final helix is kind of average. At least it's kind of scenic. It's basically a monorail after the vertical loop. Again, it looks great. It looks great on ride and off ride, but on ride, you're really only getting the first drop, kind of. The first drop's not even that good. And then the vertical loop is really good, but that's about it. So it ranks at number 9 for me. Now, at the number 8 spot, I've got Jolly Rancher Remix. This used to be Sidewinder, and they basically gave it a full overhaul. They added this flavor tunnel that blasts out scents of different Jolly Rancher flavors. It's really weird, but I actually really like it. it definitely adds a lot. I got watermelon, and throughout that entire vertical loop, you'll gray out on that vertical loop going backwards. And coming out of a gray out only to find yourself smelling watermelon, that's a really cool experience. You also have some lights, some music. So overall, it's a Vekoma boomerang, but it's definitely the best Vekoma boomerang I've done. Who knows, maybe speed of sound or the two with lap bars over in Europe are better. But yeah, this is definitely the best boomerang in America, and definitely don't regret riding this, or don't be hesitant to hop in line for this because it's definitely better than your average boomerang. Now, at the number 7 spot, I've got a ride that I used to hate, think is really boring. Now, I still don't think it's the greatest thing of all time, but I like a bit more than before. It's Lightning Racer. I just rode Thunder, not Lightning, and apparently Thunder's way better than Lightning. So maybe I got lucky. Maybe I just rode Lightning last time or something. I don't know. But Thunder is definitely really good. I'm assuming Lightning's like slightly worse, but still not terrible. There were a couple pops of airtime on Thunder. There's really not much in terms of laterals or positives, but racing the other track is a lot more fun than I realized. And maybe I just didn't care about it back in 2017 when I was like 8. But the racing does add a lot, in my opinion. And yeah, it's a bit more intense than I remember. Not really, though. I mean, it's still not in my top 50 or anything, but I definitely like it a bit more than before. It's definitely not a top 5 most overrated coaster for me anymore. We'll get to what coaster replaced that in this park in a minute, but yeah, overall, Lightning Race was definitely fun and worth giving a ride. At the number 6 spot, I've got Great Bear. This is a lower tier invert for me, but it's still fun. It's got a good first drop, and then the first half of the ride is really good. Strong vertical loop, strong Immelman, and then a pretty good 0G roll, probably on par with like Talons, which I really like. But the second half is where it kind of loses me. It has this low to the ground turn, which is really intense, but then it's kind of just got a straightaway, which is kind of boring, kind of reminded me of Ride of Steel, which, let's be real, the straightaway on Ride of Steel is not something people like. The corkscrew's decent, but didn't hit quite as hard as like Raptor's corkscrews. And then it's kind of just straight track and twists and turns and meandering to the brakes. So Great Bear's fun, but it's not in my top half of inverts for me. Now, at the number 5 spot, I've got Kondemonium. Yes, this is probably like the lowest anyone's ever ranked Kondemonium, but hear me out. It's definitely my least favorite B&M Hyper. The only B&M Hyper that I think has weaker airtime than this is Apollo's Chariot, but I like Apollo's Chariot more because it has a better setting and it's longer, so I'll definitely take Apollo over this. I don't know, it just kind of feels like a manufactured ride in a way. Like, obviously all rides are manufactured, but like this feels kind of copy and paste almost. It has the 5-second floater hill, it's got the speed hill, it's got everything you could think of for a B&M, but it executes all the elements very poorly, in my opinion. Like, yeah, you get sustained airtime, but the airtime's not very good at all. It's weak. The one-off access moment's the best part of the ride. And after that, the ride's dead. Like, you might as well just put your hands down and accept that the ride's over after that off-access moment. So overall, Kondemonium, it's fun. Maybe it's in my top 40. I don't know. But it's definitely the weakest B&M Hyper and very overrated in my opinion. Now, at the number 4 spot is Fahrenheit. I really like this ride. It's in my top 40, and it's got a great first drop, a bit better than the Eurofighter's first drops, in my opinion, because I rode in the back row both times, and you get some good whip over that. And then the Norwegian loop is one of the most underrated elements on a coaster, in my opinion. And it's not because it's whippy or anything. You don't really get any whip at all. It's because the positives in between the two inversions are so strong on this. Like, I almost grayed out every single time, even though I only got 2 rides. But I almost grayed out on those 2 rides right there. And then you get a pop of airtime coming out of the Immelman. It's really weird, but I definitely like it. and I'd imagine you get a pop of airtime heading into the dive loop if you're in the front. The Cobra rolls better than I thought. The corkscrews are kind of a dud in my opinion, but then you've got a nice moment of airtime before you hit the brakes, so that makes up for it. Overall, Fahrenheit's just a really well-rounded ride and definitely worth a ride, even if it has a long wait. At the number 3 spot is Storm Runner. Now, I do really like Storm Runner, but I still think King Dakar is my favorite Intamin accelerator. So I was a little disappointed coming off of this, but it's still a great ride. You got still a pretty good launch, even though it's nowhere near King Dakar's. And then you got a nice top hat with ejector airtime in the back row. And then after that, you got the Cobra loop, and it's not a very good element. It's kind of a transition element. But then you got the flying snake dive, which I didn't get any airtime on it, but the laterals are crazy throughout that thing. You're just pinned to the side of the train the whole time. And then those zigzags at the end are pretty fun. So it's definitely a great ride, maybe slightly overrated, but I still really like it. Now, at the number 2 spot, the new winner for the most underrated coaster I have ever ridden is none other than Comet, coming in at the number 2 spot. Oh my god, nobody talks about this thing. Like, the Beast, Phoenix, like, they have their fans. This thing, I've never heard anyone except, like, Airtime Thrills back in the day say it's great. And even Airtime Thrills, I think, undersold how great this ride is. It's a little Phoenix, in my opinion. And if you don't staple yourself with the seatbelt, then you can get some really good airtime on this thing. I rode in the very back row, and pretty much every drop gave great airtime. I was floating up out of the seat the whole time, and it's really good floater airtime. There's a couple moments of ejector thrown in there, and it's way stronger airtime than Kondemonium 2. It's not completely butter smooth, but it's still definitely smooth enough that pretty much anyone with any pain tolerance can ride it. But it's got that like wooden coaster rumble, you know? It's amazing. It's got laterals, it's got the phenomenal airtime. Definitely best airtime in the park besides the number 1 coaster. Overall, Comet's in my top 25. It's an amazing wooden coaster that everyone should ride no matter what the wait is, unless it's like a 4-hour line. And in that case, just ride my number 1 coaster, Sky Rush. It's not my number 1 overall, but it's pretty close. And the best thing is, it usually never has a wait. Right now, it's my number 3 overall, and it's ridiculous. In the front row, it's all right, but in the back, I cannot tell you how important it is to ride in the back row. I would ride left wing seat if you can, but get any seat in the back over a wing seat in any other row, because that drop is the single best element I have ever experienced on any coaster, period. So basically, you start getting airtime as you crest over it. It's like normal ejector, weak ejector. You're like, woo, this is fun. And then out of nowhere, it just shoots you out of your seat so hard. Like, I can't describe any part of that moment. There's no words that can describe how strong that airtime is when you're halfway down the drop and you think you're getting as much airtime as you're going to get. There's this kink in the track that just shoots you out of your seat into outer space. And you might have heard about it before, but I didn't really know how it was going to feel. And everyone said it would feel like a car crash almost. I was like, how's it going to feel like a car crash? You've never even been in a car crash. I know what they mean now, and your soul basically just escapes from your body in that moment. Like, I didn't check my on-ride photos, but they have the photos right there after that drop, and that's for a reason. Like, I'd love to see what my face looked like after the first time I experienced that. And that's every time, because you can't see when it's going to come. You can't see when you're about to experience the craziest airtime on the planet. And then after that, you've got a couple great ejector hills. Definitely not as good as El Toro's first 2 camelbacks, but still really good. And you've got some really positive G-heavy turns in between them. And then you've got the Stangle dive. That thing is crazy. You get no airtime, but the laterals, oh my God. You're folding over to the right, and then in the blink of an eye, you are folded over to the left, and you can't do anything about it. It's crazy. That's why you want to be on the left wing seat. You got another moment like that. You got more airtime. It's just such a phenomenal ride. Just overall, I couldn't ask for a better number 3 coaster I've ridden. I mean, I probably can, but as of right now, it's my number 3, and I'm happy to have it as my number 3. So that's my top 13 coasters at Hersey Park. Again, this list will most likely change when Wildcats Revenge opens. Again, it's probably going to take the number 2 spot, but who knows? Maybe it's going to be the next Steel Vengeance and it's number 1. Or maybe it sucks like Jersey Devil and it's behind Comet. I don't think either of those are going to happen, but we'll see. So that's my list. Let me know what you guys thought of this list down in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.